if there was a war or something, they shut the markets, we wouldn't know the price of gold. But I think when the markets reopen, people would realize how important it is to have something physical.
This is Kaiser Johnson with Liberty and Finance, and these are the Miles Franklin Weekly Specials for November 18th through November 25th, 2024, while supplies last. First, we feature backdated 1-ounce silver Austrian Philharmonics at just $3.09 over spot per ounce. We also feature the limited edition 2024 1-ounce gold UK Lion and Eagle coin at just $99 over spot per ounce. To order our specials or any of the many other options we have available, call us at 1-888-81-LIBERTY. That's 1-888-815-4237. We're available after hours and on weekends, and we look forward to speaking with you.
Hey everyone, this is Elijah K. Johnson with Liberty and Finance. And back with us today is our good friend Mario Innecco from the very popular Innecco64 YouTube channel. Mario, thank you so much for joining us today.
You're welcome, Elijah, and nice to be talking with you again.
Well, it's great to have you. I did want to discuss the escalation of war we're seeing in Ukraine, with Ukraine shooting long-range missiles made by the U.S. and also missiles made by the U.K. into Russia. So your perspective on this latest development?
Yes, it's strange, but I think it's maybe to do with what's happened in the U.S. politically and who's going to be taking over in January. And the current administration wants to make it harder for the Trump administration to bring peace to Ukraine because the Democrats and the globalists, they've pumped so much treasure and energy into Ukraine, mainly to really bring down the Putin regime, because they're after Russia, really, not like physically, but control of Russia, because, and I think they're going to lose, unfortunately. And yeah, we sent some, well, not, the UK sent some of these shadow, I forgot the name of the missiles, and I had to look at it, and it's made by actually a company that is partly owned by Airbus, which is French, BAE, which is British, and also an Italian company. So, yes, Storm Shadow is called, the missiles. And Putin replied by firing one of his new missiles as well into Ukraine. And yeah, we kind of wonder, what is the prime minister here doing? He's really trying to he's really poking the bear. And I guess we're lucky that President Putin is, he hasn't really fallen for it. But if we provoke him a lot more in the West, something could happen before January 20th, and it could be a lot harder, because for Trump to engineer some kind of peace between Russia and Ukraine.
I think that's the fear of a lot of people. You've also mentioned on your channel that, all wars are bankers' wars. So your perspective on how this really ties into the currency system and how this really has to do with finances.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the last few years with the BRICS, and also the fact that a lot of the global South countries have been buying a lot of gold, and that we've been hearing from Russia that they want to build a new monetary system outside the dollar system, and I think that's that the U.S. doesn't want to give up the privilege of running the world's currency and payment system that easily. Even President Trump, who professes to be pro-peace, says that he's going to punish countries with 100% tariffs if they trade amongst themselves in their own currencies, which sounds a little bit strange, because if Indonesia and India want to trade in their own currencies, why why should they trade in dollars? But so yeah, that's the other thing. This faction, the banking faction, the financing faction, and I noticed as well recently that the BIS, they've abandoned this M-Bridge project because they've seen that Russia has kind of used M-Bridge to create this another M kind of system within the BRICS. So, and we don't know, Elijah, what we're told publicly of what's happening might be just like a cover. And behind the scenes, these factions, be it Chinese, Russia, US, EU, UK, they're trying to work out who's going to do what, financially. But the thing is, these attacks from the Ukraine now with these new missiles from the US and UK, well, it helps those companies that produce these missiles. So it keeps the military-industrial complex going. Wars as well are really expensive, and you can use the excuse of, they're attacking us to get the public behind you. You might even start selling some Liberty bonds like they did at World War I to keep financing the debt. So yeah, ultimately, unfortunately, it's like all wars are about money and also the health of the state. I've said that before, that wars are the health of the state. And when the state is in trouble like it is now, and by state, I mean like the US, the UK, and the EU, when we have so much debt, the government is so big and people are waking up, war is a way to rally people behind the state. So it's not just a banker's war, but a statist war as well. It doesn't scare me, all this talk of war, because what can you do about it? And, that's the way I look at it. And a lot of it is to make you scared, to not live your life without fear. So that's how I see it.
Definitely. I mean, it's good to know what's going on, but at the same time, a lot of this stuff we can't control. I did want to ask you about kind of how this is going to affect us, though, because if it is the bankers' wars, right? Does that mean more taxes? Does that mean more inflation of the currency? Your perspective on how this all impacts the average person?
Well, if you look back historically, especially in the last 250 years, there's always inflation of the currency during the wars. And after the wars, the currency collapses, or there's like a lot of price rises, which people equate with inflation. And the economy is disrupted because you have millions of people going to fight. I'm not sure that's going to be the same case today, but look at the U.S. Revolutionary War. The continental dollar became called shin plaster. The U.S. defaulted. Well, it wasn't called the U.S. at that time. The Confederate States defaulted. Civil War, you had inflation with the greenbacks. After World War I, you had a lot of inflation, not just in Europe and Germany, but also in the US and the UK. Same thing after World War II. And same thing after the pandemic, even though it wasn't a war, but the reaction to it from government and the central banks was as if it was a war. And we saw the consequence of it in the last few years, or we're still seeing it with the higher cost of living. So if we go really into a kinetic war, after that war is finished, it's going to be the same kind of consequence, and people are going to be worse off, unfortunately. That's how it always happens in history.
And as for preparing for this, you've talked a lot about investing in physical precious metals. Do you see any other preparations that people should be making? It's interesting how even some nations in Europe are, on public news, just explaining how to prepare for a major war. So your perspective on that?
Well, I guess the billionaires, I've heard they've got places in New Zealand or like underground bunkers and somewhere. In Switzerland, for example, even though it's a neutral country, every house has a underground bunker, so they're prepared. I mean, how do you prepare for a nuclear war? It's a question that it's hard to answer. You just have to hope and pray that it doesn't happen. Back in the 60s, they told the kids in school to get under their desks and cover their heads, which isn't much use. But I think unless you you're very wealthy, you can't. I'm not sure you can prepare. Maybe in terms of prepping, you have some extra food and water at home, because wars could disrupt like supply chains, or they definitely will disrupt supply chains. I think here in the UK I don't think there was during World War II rationing a lot of stuff, because they couldn't ship a lot of the foods into the UK, into Britain. So yeah, maybe prepare by having some more water and food put away because of a supply chain problem.
Now, there are other methods of war, right, that Russia could engage in, or the U.S. could engage in. One of the things that you've noted recently is the potential for Russia to sabotage undersea cables in the U.S. that could disrupt the financial system. Can you expand on that?
I actually interviewed John Perez, and he told me about that. I hadn't really thought about that. And most people think that communications is done via satellite, but no, it's done through undersea fiber optic cables. There's millions of these cables running. I'm not sure if it's millions, but hundreds of thousands under the oceans. And it could be an excuse for the powers that be if they get into trouble market financially wise. They can say, oh, the Russians, they sabotaged this cable, so we're going to have to close the markets for a week to fix it because we can't communicate. And I saw there's a story the other day of a cable between Finland and Germany being damaged. And at first, the speculation was that it was Russia, but now I've seen that they're accusing the Chinese for having done that. And there's also, I guess, aside from undersea cables, and these undersea cables are important because, let's say, London, Paris, Frankfurt, they communicate with New York, the banks, they keep track of all the transactions, futures, derivatives, foreign exchange. There's 7.5 trillion, I think, of foreign exchange transactions every day. So can you imagine if that were to stop? But we've spoken about this probably in the past, and you have as well on your channel, about this cyber pandemic. That's another thing they could do. And I think that's another interesting way to wage war. It's not as deadly, but it could be as deadly because it could disrupt a lot of the supply chains, and we could end up with very little basic necessities of life. So, it's not as bad as a nuclear war, but the effect won't be very good either. So, that's how I see that.
It is interesting because so much of our financial system is digital now. Hardly anybody uses cash or anything physical. So how do you see this impacting markets potentially? I know you explained a little bit about how this might even impact the precious metal markets. We think of precious metals being something that you can hold in your hand and all of that. But, most people who in most institutions that invest in precious metals actually use the ETFs or the futures markets or these kind of somewhat digital forms of precious metals. So your perspective on that?
Yeah, all the financial markets, and by that I mean you have to trade through brokers and stock exchanges, futures exchanges, or ETFs. They would be affected, yes, if they had to, if they said the undersea cables connecting Europe and New York it's been hit. They've been hit. Yeah, the markets would cease to trade. People wouldn't know. They wouldn't know where prices were. So yeah, physical gold though wouldn't be affected, even though you might not have a price set by COMEX or the LBMA in London. But the ETFs or anything that's has a counterparty attached to it, a fund, a fund manager, a bank, that will be halted for however long they think is necessary. And that happened during World War One. When World War One broke out in 1914, even the New York Stock Exchange, even though the U.S. wasn't in that war, that closed for a few months. It's very much possible. In terms of price, we don't know. We would have to wait until they reopen the markets, and it happened recently, Elijah, back 23 years ago, after 9/11, they closed the markets. I don't know if you remember that, for a week or so, for some days, and then it started trading again.
No, when it comes to precious metals, we do see gold reacting positively to obviously the turmoil in the world. We are seeing today, as we record this on November 22nd, at about 1:30 Eastern time here, we see gold at over $2,700 again. So just about $100 from its all-time high. Your take on the recent pullback we saw after the election and this renewed rally here?
Yeah, and just to go back a little bit on this, if there was a war or something, they shut the markets, we wouldn't know the price of gold. But I think when the markets reopen, people would realize how important it is to have something physical. As for the price, I'm kind of surprised how quickly gold, silver not so much, but how gold has rebounded. And it's even made a new high today in British pound terms and in euro terms. Yeah, the dollar is strong against the fiat currencies, but I think ultimately you need to measure the dollar versus gold. So the dollar is weakening again. Some people think there might be another wave down for the gold price. That's possible. But what it shows is that the higher we go, or in the gold price, the more, exciting it's going to get. And that's why you shouldn't get excited and you shouldn't get despondent when you get ups and downs. Maybe try to buy a bit when you get these big move down, if you can, if you have some spare fiat currency. I mean, I bought some gold a week or 10 days before the last move down. So I didn't really catch that correction, but now the price is higher than when I bought it. So you just have to do your best, because it's more about protecting your the long-term viability of your savings. And unless you're trading, of course, and that's a different game. You should just try to keep dollar cost averaging. Silver, that's rebounded today as well, but it's still way undervalued. I still like silver. It's frustrating though, but one day, hopefully, it will unshackle itself from the supply of paper out there.
Another benefit, right, to owning physical precious metals is not just, if we do see a shutdown of the financial system, you still have it, but also it's a little bit harder to sell. I mean, obviously you can sell back at any time to a dealer like Miles Franklin, but it takes a little bit more work. You have to ship it registered and insured and all that. So it is a little bit of friction there that I think sometimes can be a good thing, so that we're not making these decisions impulsively or, just whenever we see the price drop, oh no, I have to sell.
Yeah, it's much easier to sell an ETF than when you actually buy gold and you hold a coin or silver, you realize how precious it is that you want to hold it. But when it's just an entry on the computer, you can just click the sell button and get out. So that's another reason to hold physical.
Definitely. And one topic that I failed to mention here that has to do with, getting back to real things is also farming. And there was actually a farmers' protest in London. And we've been talking a lot about this financial system and the currency system, and how a lot of these problems in the world are tied back to how we're on a fiat currency system, and how all nations right now are on a fiat currency system. You think also the issue with farmers and the protests there in London is a similar issue there? Can you expand on that?
Yeah, because under a fiat currency system, the bankers, they can lend $100 at 4% 10 times or more. A farmer with $100 worth of land, they can only make 2 or 3% return a year, and they have to work really hard. So if you count that over a couple of centuries, you can see how the system really favors the bankers and those who deal with credit and money, and it harms the people who deal in real things like farmers. And the other reason the farmers, I'm not even sure they're thinking about what I said, but the big reason they're protesting is that the family farms here are going to be liable now to the inheritance tax, and it's really hard if you have to pay inheritance tax to pass the farm on. Farms that have been, sometimes I've heard, 4, 5, 6 or more generations in the family. You're going to break those farms up. You're going to, destroy the family farms, which are really important. And again, who's going to benefit from that? Well, people like Larry Fink of BlackRock, and he was here yesterday, actually meeting the UK cabinet at Downing Street. And people are getting suspicious, Elijah. They're putting 2 and 2 together, because that's the World Economic Forum agenda. They don't want small farmers. They want farming regions. Like for Europe, I think they want one place, like in the Netherlands. They have very fertile and productive farmland. So they want to make that the center for all food. And what's the best way to do that? Well, you destroy the family farms. Hopefully, the protests will stop this, but I'm not too sure they will, because these people are determined. The people who run things.
Definitely, and for the issues in the U.S. here, also with having to do with farmers. We can look at our interviews with Alex Newman, who's talked quite a bit about that. I'll put a link to that in the description of this video here. And before we let you go, Mario, are there any last thoughts you'd like to leave with our viewers? Our viewers can find you at youtube.com/Innecco64. We'll put a link in the description there. And also you're on Twitter, and now X. Any last thoughts before we let you go here?
Yeah, just try to, like you said, Elijah, know what's going on, but don't let it rule your life. Just try to do what you need to do for yourself and your family, and try to enjoy life, because you only get one chance here on the planet.
Mario, really appreciate your time today. Thank you so much, and God bless.
Thank you, Elijah. Take care.
This is Kaiser Johnson with Liberty and Finance, and these are the Miles Franklin Weekly Specials for November 18th through November 25th, 2024, while supplies last. First, we feature backdated 1-ounce silver Austrian Philharmonics at just $3.09 over spot per ounce. We also feature the limited edition 2024 1-ounce gold UK Lion and Eagle coin at just $99 over spot per ounce. To order our specials or any of the many other options we have available, call us at 1-888-81-LIBERTY. That's 1-888-815-4237. We're available after hours and on weekends, and we look forward to speaking with you.